Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 160 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Tim Bainton. He's the president of Blue Chip Sports Management, the COO of Epic Padel, and an adjunct professor at Marymount University in the College of BILT. Tim has a background from tennis as a collegiate player and a coach. Today he's an experienced sports business professional and an entrepreneur. We spoke about being the tennis coach for Bill Gates, how to develop tomorrow's leaders, his view on paddle, pickleball and tennis, his teaching style, why leaders don't always take the invite, and much more. Tim Bainton, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate being here.
It's my great pleasure to have you on the show. You are the president of Blue Chip Sports Management and also the COO of Epic Padel, among other things. You have a lot on your plate, as we just spoke about before we press record here. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my core business, I was a tennis player, one of these guys that was pretty darn good, not quite Federer, Nadal, and that migrated to going to college here in the United States, and where I have been since as a freshman in 2001. My business then migrated into, I thought it would be cool to own a tennis club. So with that, not by design, but quite entrepreneurial by nature, and to own a tennis club, and then migrated that into owning and operating multiple tennis specific facilities that then migrated into tennis and health clubs, corporate wellness, bigger box sports facilities as a whole. And the creation of that was my company, Blue Chip Sports Management. Along that trajectory, a few things have always been very ingrained in me, and one was education. And that has taken two different trajectories for me personally. One is as foremost as a tennis coach. I've been very fortunate to coach some of the best juniors in the world and hone my skills there. But as the business grew, my ability to be on the court and do that, which is really where my heart is, obviously transitioned. The other part of that was being very well educated and developing ideas on sort of the operational business side of how specifically clubs are run, especially here in North America. And then having a voice in that platform, writing curriculum, speaking at conferences, so on and so forth. And then where we are today, to give you a quick synopsis, I had a parent company for about 15 years, the Van Meter companies. They're one of the largest privately held real estate companies in America. And we learned so much from them, being basically the ugly stepchild of a much bigger organization. But it really gave us a good grounding. And in 2019, we were able to amicably buy them out. And then 30% of what is today Blue Chip Sports Management is, I'm very proud to say, is employee owned. And, we have close to 90 activations that we are involved in. And that's everything: tennis, pickleball, gym, golf. We even have some activations in things like volleyball, basketball. But basically think of it as a full service club operations facilities business. Now, the other part of that was when I was able to absorb control of the company fully in 2019, I had adjunct at universities for about a decade. Both my parents were teachers. I think it's in my blood. I enjoyed teaching in the classroom. And for me, it was like a once a week type thing, looked good on the resume, got me out the house. And I don't know, got to listen to myself speak for an hour, I suppose. But I was afforded a wonderful opportunity at Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia, to come in right in the height of COVID, which was remarkable because they a Division III institution here, literally 5 minutes from the steps of Washington, D.C., and they wanted to build a men and women's tennis program. Well, I have coached many a kid that have played at the higher echelons of NCAA collegiate tennis, but it was never on my radar to be a college coach. And what I did was I segued building these programs because I had the infrastructure surrounding it with regards to clubs and resources to bring in players. And we've had tremendous success in 3 years. And I'm now in a position where On the other side of that, I went to the business school here at Marymount University, and I said, look, I believe I can build you the preeminent sports management program, not just in the country, but in the world. And I think at first, 3 years ago, in the height of COVID, they thought I was crazy. But I'm happy to say that we're now going through that transition 3 years into this process where I basically am going to be in charge of the sports management, hospitality, and entertainment program here at the College of BILT, Business Innovation and Technology program here in DC, and continue to build with that. And it's really exciting because from that has stemmed so many opportunities personally, professionally for our business, and most importantly for the university and for the students here. We, like I said, we're in one of the wealthiest zip codes in the United States, and it was mind-boggling to me that somebody had not come along and done this prior. But there's a couple of things in life I hold true, and hard work and a hell of a lot of luck. So I think that's how we came full circle to where we are today. And then the last piece of this that I know we're going to talk about is, in a nutshell, my company, especially being from England as well, I know of Padel. I knew that it was beginning to have a growth opportunity here in North America. Where I would have been if it was just my company, Blue Chip, doing this solely, we would have probably put a court here, a court there, and just tested the market. But what happened was I was approached by numerous groups specifically from the Middle East in the past year about potentially opening clubs here in North America and using my company's operational prowess and my network here in North America to kind of, light the match, if you will. So basically entertain some of these conversations. And it came down to a group out of the UAE who I have now become very close with, both obviously from a business relationship, but also really love the integrity and the way that they're going about doing this, that are heavily based here in Arlington, Virginia as well. And basically want to be the largest provider of, it's multifaceted. The first part is we want to have the most paddle courts in North America. So that's a little different when you say paddle clubs. We have many different methodologies of how we're going to do this. Some will be absolutely standalone facilities. Some will be add-ons with everything from universities, municipalities to swim and tennis clubs. You name it, we are going to be doing it, but all falling under the Epic brand. And then what was really unique about the strategy that we've taken with Epic is we understand that this is a growth opportunity. There's significant wealth coming into this space. And we wanted to see how we can activate our resources to improve. Most people would say your competitors, but we're looking at it as literally the rest of the tribe, if you will, that are trying to go after this opportunity here in North America together. And what we've done is we've invested in close to 20 paddle related companies, specifically based, not exclusively, but about probably 90% exclusively here in North America. And that's everything from clubs to the Hexagon Cup to the New York Atlantics, to Bond out of the Hamptons, Paddle 39, and the list goes on and on. So we're keen to observe how that market grows, and we want to be a part of other people's success as well, and learning, because this is such a new trajectory for us. So yeah, those are the three things. So it's definitely running the sports management and hospitality program here at Marymount. And then my company, Blue Chip, I'm fortunate that my role is one of, can seek new business and shake hands and kiss babies. And I've got a wonderful team that handle the day-to-day operations. And then Epic Padel has come along as kind of a no-brainer, and it fits perfectly into what they want to do and what we already have. I mean, like when it comes to opening and running successful facilities, we are the best in the business. So the marriage of those two things, I think the future is pretty exciting.
Definitely. Wow. A lot of dissect here, I feel. But let's stay on the paddle for now. I mean, you mentioned you have a tennis background, which obviously is a bit different, but, racket sport. It's a lot of talk about also pickleball, and there is paddle tennis, paddle. So how do you see the competitors and fighting for players and so forth?
Okay, so great question. And I think that let me start by giving a little backstory. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a tennis purist. If I could wave my magic wand and the whole world played tennis and that was it, I would be okay with that. But I have to preface that with, I'm also a very shrewd businessman, right? And without spending the next 24 hours boring you to death with how tennis in North America has made significant missteps prior to COVID and then got given a lifeline, I won't bother you with that. But I will say this. Let's start with tennis. Tennis is the only sport globally that has parity between male and females at the highest level of the game. It actually has a larger female audience than men, which is extremely rare and uncommon in the sports world. It's universally proven to add and scientifically backed to add 10 years to your life if you're a lifelong tennis player, and you can literally play from your 3 to 103. So the benchmarks of which tennis should be the most popular sport in North America are right there. I just said them to you, but yet for a multitude of reasons, missteps through the past, specifically 30 years after a huge boom in tennis when it literally was right outside of the major North American sports, coming in at like number 5 outside of your baseball, your football, and your basketball, and then maybe throw in hockey in the, but in the McEnroe era where there was a lot of infrastructure being built and so on and so forth. Like tennis was right there. Times have changed significantly, and some of that's to do with the infrastructure and the leadership, but most of it is also to do with just the world we live in and the different competition that there is for people's time and their eyeballs and ancillary dollars, etc. You then segue over to pickleball. Now, again, in a full disclaimer, we have 30 sites that offer pickleball. Again, it's about real estate, right? If people want to come, pay, play, and stay, why would I not offer it? I would be a stupid businessman to not do that. Do I see the benefits to the sport? Absolutely. Is it easier to learn than tennis? Does it have a quicker benchmark in which you can enjoy, learn to score and play? And therefore, without a shadow of a doubt, is the noise from the ball annoying as hell? Absolutely. Is it visually not great to watch compared to tennis? Yes, that is correct. Is it going to struggle to have massive television rights and ever compete with the US Open? Will never happen. However, let me again be clear before anyone listening starts to hate, we fully embrace it. And are there absolute parities between pickleball and tennis and the relationship and how you get consumers in the door to enjoy both? Without a doubt. And it is a wonderful opportunity that has materialized here in North America. Then what you have coming is paddle. And what is unique in its very simplest form is you cannot play paddle in your driveway. You cannot play paddle by adding lines on a tennis court. The uniqueness of the court alone, and this is unarguable with anyone else that will go up against me on this. The reality is that the conceptualization of the court in a space is so specific. It's like going to a golf course, okay? You cannot replicate it in a cheaper version. Thus, therefore, the business side of it behind it is more protected. That is the concern with pickleball. And again, I will tell anyone I would be happy to be wrong. However, I would be very wary. There are a lot of commercial pickleball clubs opening because there's a lot of second career, upper middle class people investing in it. And that's what happened to the tennis boom in the 70s and 80s. You had guys and girls who were lawyers, doctors, and had young kids and wanted to have a second career. So what did they do? They opened tennis and health clubs. The same thing is happening. The market is already going to be oversaturated. You've got people that are coming in North America and buying up, the commercial industry, after COVID is struggling, and they're getting discounted upfront rents, long-term leases with back-end deals that are not attractive, and they are going to struggle to keep people indoors supporting those leases, especially as the saturation continues. But at the moment, it's an absolute they're literally opening everywhere. And again, the height requirements and the size of the court is significantly more doable than indoor tennis and still more doable than padel. I also then would allude to where the investment is coming from. And I think that's unique about the United States. Padel has investment and an already trajectory moving from the Middle East, from Europe, and from Asia specifically, and Latin America, with interest in this route. Now, America is a whole different beast of an operation than the UK or Sweden, to give you, to try and keep it close to home here. You are dealing with, you will not find anywhere else in the world where there are more distractions and more opportunities for people to spend their ancillary dollars. So the idea of striking when the iron is hot, absolutely. And we're very aware of that at Epic. But what we also have to try to do is be unique in marrying the opportunity for real estate to be used in a racket sport component that is attractive. I know you had Robin on here, the founder of Racket X. When we were at Racket X, they had the showroom floor set up, and it's in the Miami Convention Center, and it's nothing more than a massive warehouse. But you were able to, with beautiful branding and very clean, but you were able to go from a padel court to a pickleball court to a tennis court to a cocktail to a coffee to buy some merchandise, little stretching area. I think that sort of specifically targeted middle class, non-big box gym, health and wellness driven, family orientated opportunity is going to be the racket club of the future. Now, my partners at Epic Padel still do not love me saying this because they just want paddle, paddle, paddle. And I don't disagree with that. But I also think that you're going to see with Epic, as we continue to grow, a merger of some of these other ancillary sports that are complementary. Because I do think it is dangerous to put all your eggs in one basket. Tennis did this and struggled. Pickleball is doing it, and I think will struggle. And I think paddle right now could be wise and say, look, we know we're going to be the new kid on the block. We got the investment, we got the sex appeal to it. It's cool, whatever. But let's look a little bit more long term, and how do we protect and safeguard against that? And I think that my background and the relationship here with Epic, I think we're going to be pretty savvy to that. Again, doesn't mean that in the right area we're not going to have standalone paddle clubs. We absolutely have those already in the pipeline. But I think, to go back to your original question, those that are smart in the world of sports facilities businesses are going to absolutely embrace all of these and will find ways to marry them so that the consumer ultimately pays, plays, and stays consistently. That's the world we live in. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, in Sweden, it was the same thing. Like during and after COVID, there was opening paddle places all over the place. And at some point now, when the hype went down a little bit, if you hadn't done your correct investments, then the places who just opened somewhere in a warehouse with nothing much to it, those places died out pretty fast.
Of course. Yeah. And we've seen, look, I've seen that happen with tennis. I've already gone and done my due diligence, and especially here in the DC area, toured around multiple pickleball facilities. And I know that commercial real estate piece very well. And there's a reason why McDonald's stay open. They have traffic. It's more affordable. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it's to do with traffic. And again, there are outliers to that, of which we've invested in. I mentioned Bond up in the Hamptons. I mean, it's the Hamptons, for God's sake. Of course, it's going to be the greatest, but who is your consumer base, right? I mean, they literally, off of a seasonal membership there in the Hamptons, can make that an extremely profitable business, because the sociology behind the club is very different than, like you said, if you're in a commercial warehouse in some industrial area outside of a metropolis city. So it's all very, every situation is unique. And again, I think that's where the experience of our company at Blue Chip, we've had activations in every single possible space that you can imagine. Everything from high-end country clubs to municipalities, universities, private schools, racket clubs, big box gyms, corporate wellness, you name it, we've been involved. And also, what I'm most proud about, which I think is really going to be exciting for Epic, is that we've got good at safeguarding, because look, we were never the Lifetime or the Genesis or the Midtowns. We took some of the crumbs, if you will, of the bigger box gyms to be able to build our entities. And as a result, that really did make us extremely well-oiled and streamlined in how we operated, because a lot of the clubs that we would go into specifically manage, the only reason a club needs management to come in is because they're not doing well financially. So our ability to see where the issues lie, to connect with our members and the larger community around there, and to bring people in, like I keep saying, come pay, play, and stay. We are better versed in that than I think anyone. And that's kind of our magic sauce, is that, we can now, 20 years into doing this, you can foresee so many of those potential pitfalls that we basically made a career going in and fixing. It's all there now, just with a wealth of experience in how we would choose locations, how we open, what our membership models are, what our offerings, our programming, what our amenities are. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that we still won't make mistakes, but they'll be on the smaller end, which we'll be able to pivot from, and it shouldn't be too challenging for our ownership investors and the growth of our brand.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's really important. And I mean, you have a lot of experience from sports facility operations and management. And as you said, like 20 years of experience in the industry. Of course, now with Epic Padel, that, a new venture, you're bringing all this experience with you. So it makes sense of what you said, like you're more experienced going into this venture, and might be mistakes, but not as large as you might have done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, like getting older, getting wiser, getting grayer, you start to be, you're guarded by reflection about, what you've done well in the past, what you can do better. Again, you're less bulletproof to mistakes once you start to own a business and have accountability to investors and other people. So it's been a good process, but I'm excited. I think that, literally in the past 60 days in North America, the amount of paddle courts across North America has doubled in the last 60 days. So that shows you how young in its infancy it was, but it just clearly shows you how the trajectory is growing. And there's some really there's some good people in this. There's some exciting, that's almost a little bit where also tennis failed, was, you didn't get a lot of good people coming into the sport, like higher end investors and entrepreneurs and people that could be creative from other areas. It was a very insulated industry. And that's what's exciting, and pickleball has done a very good job of this as well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you got people coming from all different walks, from pro sports, from Wall Street, you name it, influencers, whatever. And Padel's doing the same thing. I think the sport is definitely more attractive than both pickleball and I hate to say it, and tennis. I think it has a uniqueness to it. It has a flow to it. It has an energy to it. It has a camaraderie part to it that is competitive, but also, paddle is strange. It is uber competitive, but this, and I've heard so many people say it. It's one of the only sports I've ever seen where people lose a point and they're still smiling, because just the adrenaline of the rally itself was of that level of excitement, and it's quite remarkable. So, we're excited, and we have our plan. We have, like I mentioned, we have our investments, but Epic as a brand, we have 3 clubs that we have leases signed on here in the DMV, in the DC area, that are going to be opening in the Tyson's Corner area, Alexandria, Virginia, and then just outside of Baltimore. And then we're very fortunate in that some of our investors are also very connected politically as well. And we will be then moving to specifically Culver City, Layton, Utah, and Burlington, Toronto will be our next 3 stops. So our geography and our footprint is going to, by the end of Q4 of this year, be pretty significant and larger than anybody else. That is, when you look at the geography covered, no one will come close to that footprint. And then when it's up to us to try and, it's like anything, right? You got to run these clubs successfully. You got to have people wanting to come. You got to have the sport's got to continue to mature and grow. We have to continue to refine how we're going about our operations and trying to make them as best we can. I'm fortunate that Epic Padel is extremely well funded. but also it's funded by people that are shrewd businessmen, and therefore the pressure is on to make these successful entities. But I think also I've been around long enough to know that that starts with the reputation of the consumer to the business versus any way before the first dollar we ever put in the bank account. So yeah, it's an exciting, ridiculously busy next year ahead of us. So
I understand that. And of course, that's only the paddle stuff. And then you have the blue chip and you're also a professor and obviously you're keeping busy. So
yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit, like time management and how you working with structure in order to make this all work.
Well, the irony of it is I think I'm an ideas guy. So anyone that knows me closely knows that dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and getting up at the same time every day is definitely not my strong suit. I put a lot of the credit to being a young father. As I said, I have an almost 3-year-old at home, and that definitely regulated my sleep schedule and made me a little bit more. But for me, look, my personal makeup is one of, I live and breathe for what we call handshakes and smiles, the ability to be proud of what I'm working on, what the team's working on, what others that are in my network are working on that I can cross promote. Like that's where I flourish is honestly just in those conversations, those chats. I really enjoy the human interaction and being very present with people and talking about, what motivates them and hearing that and how it can sort of work into our ecosystem and vice versa. The opportunity here at Marymount has been wonderful because, we're creating, literally the only sports management incubator in the country. And we're seeking grants to create the first sports management institute in the country. And, look, I would be lying if it wasn't. I mean, you can see on the banner behind us here, it's MU Sports Management and my company, Blue Chip. We're a proud sponsor of this entity within the College of BILT here. And, we get 24 interns a year that have to come through the BBA program, undergrad, and that come and work for Blue Chip and Blue Chip subsidiaries, including Epic, for example. And so the relationship is very strong. But Marymount, look, I mean, I wouldn't have this access to the school if Marymount wasn't the top of the pyramid. It's very simple. We are a piece of a much larger, successful, flourishing university and institution. And it's just an exciting time to figure out how those pieces kind of come together. And I think, again, that's maybe, for all my faults, that's one of my skills is trying to figure out how to marry things that I'm interested in and that I think also benefit all those around us. Because, again, the more you want to push your agenda, if you get more people feeling that you're worthwhile being around, it's easier to push whatever agenda you have too. And the more you can marry those, the easier life is. I'll say this real quick. I think that the university here, we have a significant opportunity to make an impact beyond Blue Chip, beyond Epic. Like I said, it's Washington, D.C., despite your politics, the most powerful city in the world. You can't argue that. And we're right here. So we're excited about what's coming down the pipeline. The university has some tremendous students that go here, and it's in a growth mentality. And I think that, again, a little bit of luck and hard work in life. It's funny how things work out in right time, right place. And we've got some exciting stuff coming ahead. When it comes to Blue Chip, look, Blue Chip is, when Epic opens facilities, Blue Chip will be the operator, right? And I say that reluctantly because one of the things about Blue Chip is that we are in more places than you will ever know we are because we are an operator first. And when we come in and basically take over your management and your facility operations, we understand that you've had a successful period that maybe you just need some help. And we're not trying to steal your thunder or your brand. So we immerse ourselves within your brand and your history, but we obviously get very astute with regards to working on your systems, training, operations, and outlook. So Blue Chip, we, again, still heavily in tennis, pickleball, now padel. We do an awful lot of consulting. We consult in close to 16 states now. And that's very varying clients. It's some are major conglomerates on the corporate wellness side. Some are your mom and pop type gyms that are still hanging in there that are worried about, where their next steps are and do they need to be sold, repositioned, turned around, invested in. And then what I've always liked is, and one of the reasons why I named it Blue Chip Sports Management, was the key emphasis being on the word sports. I'm a sports guy. You'd be hard pressed to find any sport that I wouldn't sit down and watch. And, as the company has grown out of the roots in which we were stronger, which was in the racket club and the racket and health club space, we wouldn't shy away from targeting other opportunities, and not so much even in sports. Like I mentioned with the program that we're going to have here at Marymount, it's the sports, hospitality, and entertainment. So, it's a much broader curriculum and things that we can get involved in. And as I've got older and wiser, and especially as we empower younger, smarter people than I'll ever be around me that are more clued into these things, it's very exciting. So, one thing, I've got a group of interns who have come through and have now come on to work full time at Blue Chip. And they have gone ahead and created an entity called BC3, which is basically the first specifically driven towards Division 3 athletes in high net worth, dense metropolis populations, representing them on their NIL interest, their name, image, and likeness, which I'm sure I know you've had a few guys on here that have actually been guest speakers. I saw you had Mark and Darren. They came and had a chat with us with Marymount in our sports marketing class. But no one's focusing on that on the Division 3 athlete in more of the localized, affluent business communities geared around major metropolis cities such as DC, New York, Chicago. And I understand why. It's not to say they're wrong, but a lot of the NIL space right now is going after, the big ticket, the quarterback for Alabama or the starting guard at Duke or whatever it may be. We see a different angle there. But the reason I bring that up is it's an example of the incubation through the sports management program here. And then also the marrying of that with regards to our company and how it all just flows real well together. And, look, these guys and girls that are involved in BC3, these guys they're 22 years of age, and they're going to get ownership in a company that they can fly with. Now, again, the pressure's on them because I'm definitely not running it, but it's an amazing ecosystem that we're potentially creating here and very unique to the sports management space. So I think we're going to definitely look to see more of that. This is going to be our first activation in that space. But look to see more of that as we continue to go and as we push it more. So it's exciting. And again, what's fun for me is I have no idea what trajectory that's going to take next. And that's what makes it exciting.
And I love that because I feel like from the sports media side, it's a lot of focus obviously on like pro sports, but the sports industry is so much bigger than that. So I really like that they go into the, Division 3 and NIL and really niche and see that there is more to the sports business.
I'll tell you a story. I was in the inaugural class at Georgetown's sports industry management program. And I remember my very first class. I was a little bit of a different student because I went to this, I was like 28. I was a little bit older when I went back to do my master's degree. I remember sitting in the class on the very first day, and I had created Blue Chip and was working in this space, for at the time, about 5 years. And I remember sitting in this class very first day, and everyone was wearing a 3-piece suit. They all could quote Jerry Maguire, every single line of the movie, and every single person wanted to be a sports agent. Every single one, without fail. I was the outlier. And it was interesting looking back because, again, I didn't know a whole lot about that space at the time. I was so ingrained in what I was doing, just trying to put food on the table and run a successful business. But it's interesting because I bring that up because one of the big philosophies that we talk about here at both at Blue Chip and specifically at Marymount Sports Management is that you got to be careful when you use that word, I want to be in the sports industry, because it is extremely insulated in the methodology, especially if you're in a large city like DC, that to make it, you're going to go work for the Commanders, for the Wizards, for the Mystics. And the reality is not only are those jobs extremely few and far between, like the Commanders, for example, the Commanders only have 40 people in their executive office, 40. So the idea of we're going to graduate each year and go work for you're in one of the most competitive spaces there can possibly be. So the idea of understanding a broader sports, hospitality, entertainment and seeing how different branches can bring you what you ultimately want, which, look, who doesn't want a career in sports, right? Sounds awesome, and it is awesome. But finding avenues to get there is a lot broader, and there's significantly more opportunity and ways to achieve it. The problem is it's not universally taught at an undergrad and a graduate level, because the selling point of sports management degrees is you're going to go work for a big major team or an agency or Nike, whatever. And very few do, because of the competitiveness of the space. So what happens a lot of the time and where these programs go wrong is that they sell that. And when, say, Johnny graduates and can't get a job with, the LA Lakers, he then goes and becomes a car dealer or a real estate agent, or goes and gets a real job. And you lose good people that could obviously find different avenues into the space. And like I said, the broader way to look at that is you're in a service business, and the hospitality piece, there's so many avenues that people don't even recognize in order to stay relevant and to also hone your skills in a variety of different areas as well.
I like that. And I assume that that's something that you preach as well when you teach your classes.
I try to. There was a guy, I remember when I was in my early days living and working here in the DC area. There was I'm actually not a super religious guy, but there was a commercial that used to be on the radio, driving to work every day, and literally in between every news break or whatever, it was a guy from McLean Bible Church, and he would always finish with his commentary. He would always say, "Just a thought, not a sermon." And it's interesting because I try not to preach too much to these students, and there is a lot of truth in that statement. It's just a thought. Let's get it in there. Let's get thinking. And again, trying to empower, especially this new generation, to see where they can take it. And what's amazing is, I'll tell you this, and sometimes it's unpopular, I don't feel any desire to power people that are older than me or deem themselves wiser. I am a strong believer in, I want to empower those who are younger, hungrier, and considerably more well adapted to the technology and to the outlook and perspective of the next generation. I've always found it a little funny when, especially in the tennis and health club industry, you'd find these consultants and these people were so out of touch. And I mean, look, I'm 41 today, and I've said this for many, many years. If I'm still running blue chip or trying to be the head honcho of Epic Padel when I'm like 55, you can take me out to the pasture and shoot me, because the mark of successful companies is that the person who's driving the train does not stay there because they literally do not have the capacity to do so. And that's a very interesting point, because, and I can prove it, when you look at pro sports, there are outliers in every sport that will have that 20-year generational career. Federer, Nadal, Serena, LeBron James. Michael Jordan didn't have a 20-year career, right? So let's look at this, okay? So the perspective, if you look at it with like pro athletes, they have a window. And the same is true with high-driven ideas people in the business side too. Bill Gates does not run Microsoft anymore, right? He stepped down many, many years ago because he's savvy enough to understand this. And I like bringing Bill Gates up because I actually was his tennis coach for a number of years. So I always like throwing that one in. The people, why are you throwing out that? Well, I know a little more. But the reason I say that is, look, and maybe getting a little off topic, but I'll tell you a little bit about my kind of philosophy on all of this, is that I've always, look, we all have egos, of course, but I've always felt uncomfortable when people use terms like industry leader in an industry that's not that good. Do you know what I'm saying? It always blows my mind. Like it's almost like an insult, but no one sees it. So like I use the tennis industry like for the last 20 years, and you would go to these conferences and people would say, "Oh, this is an industry leader talking to you as the economics of the business are literally tanking." But all of a sudden, if you're attending, you're like this, like, "Oh my goodness, this person," and it's all complete BS, right? And every industry has these same issues. So for me, a couple of things I live by, and is one, leaders do not always take the invite, right? If there's a takeaway from this, leaders do not always take the invite. What I mean by that is, if you have an opportunity to go on a podcast, or if you have an opportunity to go be a keynote speaker, and you don't have anything new, fresh, inciting to offer, if you're a smart leader, you do not go, because you're doing a disservice. All you're doing is appeasing your own ego. And let me tell you this, you're not Mick Jagger, and no one cares, right? No one is flying halfway across the country and taking time away from their family and from their work to attend a conference to listen to you get up on stage. They're going there for some sea, some sun, maybe some free giveaways, and hopefully having a drink at the pool that night. But the problem is that the ego within, and this happens in all industries, the ego is so big, right, that people just keep, and the problem is that the curators of information get lazy. And it's very easy to say, who's the most known or the biggest name? That does not mean that they have anything good to say. And we fall into that trap. So to come back, I talked about the term industry leaders, and I look at this across now multiple verticals in the sports management and the business hospitality space. Is what is the timeline of being relevant, right? And I'm a big believer. I always look to use myself, right? I said, look, if I'm still trying to wind down running blue chip now. There's a reason I'm the president and not the CEO anymore, right? Because I understand I have to have a team much better than me in order to continue to grow this, right? And as that morphs into other projects, are there some level of expertise and wisdom that are relevant? Of course there are. But you can't be setting these companies up. Like, I can't set Epic Padel up for my ability to run it. I have to be a facilitator to get Epic off the ground, to get the next generation that will see that through. That, for me, is the benchmark of being a successful leader in this space, in fact, in any space. And to go back full circle, when you get, look, there are outliers, the same way I said about, look, LeBron James is the top of his game for 20 years, okay? Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, these guys, 20 years. But they're outliers, okay? For anyone else, I'm not trying to, there's some amazing people on this podcast that you've had. None of us are LeBron James, right? None of us are Roger Federer. And the more that you empower other people behind you to literally launch what you may have created to levels that you could never even dream of being possible, the more that ego, that legacy, that wanting to be the top of the food chain, which look, I'm guilty, not trying to say that's not the case, but the success that will back that up and the integrity behind it will be so much better. And you see that, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't run Facebook day to day anymore. I'm not saying something that people don't know, but when it's on a smaller level, the affinity of understanding that is I think a little bit more challenging, and people have blinkers on with regards to that. And that's damaging. And unfortunately, if it happens in a space where there's lots of so-called leaders doing the same thing, it becomes the culture, and that then becomes detrimental to the growth of an entire sector. And that's what you've seen happen in the tennis business in North America. And is it beginning to break through those chains because of COVID, pickleball, and now padel? Yes, it is. But you've got to remember, you've got a sport that should never, ever, ever have been in that situation, ever. So it's reactive. And then we all know the dangers of being reactive. So,
yeah. No, that's a lot of good points. And, I guess that technically you could be an industry leader in a bad industry, but still I understand what you mean, to use that as a buzzword in order to, try to elevate it. Yeah.
It personally makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. I was always savvy enough to question those that were educating in a certain space. Not because I'm I'm just curious, right? I mean, you're the one sitting there absorbing the information. It's good to know, like, what have you done to achieve the ability to tell me how to go back and run my business? And that's not vetted very well. But that's not just in that's in a multitude of industries. But I think the bit I didn't mention was, like I said, I think that there's a way to have an impact, but the way that if you are in a position of leadership, the way you morph away from that into more of a governance board role versus being the one driving the train. Like, look, there's no doubt that Epic Paddle for the next 2 years, I'm driving the train. But 3 to 5 years, I would be the first to say we probably need to change that. And I become an advisor. And then as my career goes on, I'm already beginning to do this now. I just joined the board of St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Is that if you have any sort of ability to network and to bring, you should be doing some philanthropic good in the world. You shouldn't be trying to still hold on for, let me win a lifetime achievement award or who cares? Again, it's just not something that is, and again, I think a lot of it comes with some wisdom. I would be remiss if I didn't, when I was 25, I probably wouldn't say half the things I'm saying to you now. But it is a lot more, and I mean this sincerely, it is a lot more impactful for me to see those that are working for both in and out of my circle do things bigger and better than I could ever have done. And the only thing that honestly really gives me sort of that little bit of an ego kick is that if you knew that you were somehow part of it. Because again, I go back to the silly example, I'm not Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. I don't have a hit. You only have so much commercial value, right? And when you're working in a commercial industry and you're not a celebrity, that's non-existent. It really is. I hate to tell everybody. So the better your information, the more relevant your information, the more curated, the more original, the more directed, and the more empowering, and the fewer times that people are able to, in today's day and age of being able to share stuff instantly, the more impact it will have. And again, I was guilty of this. I mean, back in 2016, 17-ish, I mean, I was speaking at 20 conferences a year, and it was killing me because I kept trying to come up with original content because I did believe that was the way to do it. But this was before ChatGPT and everything else. And who the hell could come up with 20 original ideas on, and new presentations? It just wasn't feasible. But, that's kind of my trajectory of realizing, you know what, there's got to be a lot less of this. And, when you're getting calls to go, to California and to Florida or whatever, and to go do a presentation or a workshop, we got to start saying no to some of these things,
No, I think that's an interesting point of view. And I know that if you're aware of Naval Ravikant, he went on Rogan, and then I think he's like, I'm not doing anything for 2-3 years, like media-wise, because I will say the same things.
Yeah.
And he went on the biggest platform. Most people heard him.
Sure.
And he was like, okay, I don't need to say the same thing again on 10 other podcasts. So that makes sense.
I am a keen observer of the Joe Rogan podcast. I grew my trajectory there has been, I've spent 20 years as a diehard Howard Stern fan. And then that has migrated in maybe the last 2 years to Rogan's back catalog. And while we're on the subject, I also enjoy, I've also come to enjoy Theo Von's podcast as well.
He's really
believe
funny.
It or not. I like, you know what I like? I like I think you've got a very genuine, curious guy masked within the comedy. And it's funny because I remember when I first heard his comedy, I thought it was terrible, but I've grown to actually be quite high on him. And Rogan is again, you got to sit back and not take yourself too seriously. And there are some Rogan podcasts that are very interesting. There are others that I switch off and move on, and there's others that I'm kind of curious as to, is that really good for his reputation, even saying all this stuff? But then on the other side of it, I kind of admire the fact that he's willing to do so. So it's an interesting trajectory.
100%. I mean, he's the OG of podcasting for sure.
Yeah.
We talked about leadership, and you are in the educational system and teaching. So how do we develop tomorrow's leaders?
Well, let's start with education. Higher education, especially in North America. I'm not going to speak to other countries, but I can speak to North America pretty well because I'm not only working in it, but I also have gone to school 3 different times here in the US. It's a very saturated market. It is a very expensive market. It is a market that is at a precipice of having to make significant changes in how we educate, in what we educate, in what the cost to educate it is. And again, I could bore your listeners with background of in the United States. I mean, there's a university on every street. It's like a church. And there are obviously major, well-known, established universities with endowments where they literally would never have to charge tuition ever again. And there's schools that are going out of business because they can't keep the lights on because of the cost of operating that school. And we've seen that. My dissertation is actually on my PhD dissertation is on the financial viability of Division III athletic programs in North America. So my approach is I get students to do things, everything's project-based. The major focus, I mean, you come into my class, you have to have friended me on LinkedIn. We grow that community. Your career does not start when you graduate college. Your career has already started. I mentioned one of my phrases I live by is handshakes and smiles. Every single person you interact with is a chance to advance your network. How you choose to use it, learn about it, and handle it is up to you. We talk to ad nauseum about when we have guest speakers come in and the follow-up and the interaction and understanding not to ask for something, but instead to show someone sincerity, some gratitude for their time, and to make yourself available, potentially following up, and to show a genuine interest. And see, people don't teach that. I'll sidetrack real quick. One of the major things that is not taught, period, in education is soft skills, your ability to interact with people. And especially if you look at COVID babies out of COVID, the lockdown and all of this, and also the reliance on technology, it has become more and more apparent. So again, for all my faults, I've never had an issue with that part of my life. That's something I just naturally gravitate to. And I think it comes across in how we teach and trying to get the students to, yes, we're teaching, look, I mean, I teach sports marketing, sports management, sports comms, sports analytics, but all of these are project-based, and they're project-based because I want kids to get up and to public speak and to speak to their peers and to get away from their fears of doing so, because I know forget whether they're going to stay in the sports business. You need these skill sets, and they're unique and they're not commonly taught. So there are some things that sort of are advantageous that are not on the curriculum. And to be honest with you, probably shouldn't even be in my purview of actually trying to teach, but I do anyway, because I believe in trying to, it's like building the junior tennis player. We're trying to build the complete person that's going to go on and have a successful career in business. So networking, though, is key. I think as well, trying to, I'm at a weird age as a teacher, because I'm 41, but I'm not 61, and I'm also not 21. I'm at that weird age where I think that students do relate to me, even though I'm 20 years older. And no offense to my colleagues here, for example, in the College of BILT, who are are significantly older. And that's just a generational thing. I think I'm caught at I'm of the generation, I heard Rogan talk about it. I'm of the generation that didn't have the internet and cell phones, but then also did. So you're seeing two different wisdoms there. The wisdom of, my parents that were World War II babies, all the way through to the digital age that we're in now. And I think that if you're sharp to that, and you can look closely at what it is that's your own personal makeup and see the good, the bad, and again, a thing that I try and teach, I use myself. I'm not against the self-deprecating, like, look, I made this mistake. I'm very honest. And I think that also resonates with people, because again, if you're a teacher and you're teaching a class of 30 people, there's this notion that you are bigger, better, and above them. And I really try to not have that sort of a structure. I also don't enjoy it personally. I don't like that idea of you're on a precipice because you're the professor. And so to trying to get that idea, more of an incubator, more of a think tank, getting these students to really participate. Like I said, we don't have weekly homework. We don't do written assignments. It's all project based. So for example, in our sports management class this past semester, they had to create, I had, I think, 4 groups. They had to create an actual legitimate sports entity. They had to do the branding, the build out, the mission statement, their corporate structure. They had to put budgets together, and we had a live RFP, request for proposal, for Arlington County. and they had to go and literally write the request for proposal under their new entity that they created. And then they had to professionally deliver it to a board of guests that we brought in a real world setting. I mean, someone that's, done multiple RFPs in my business, so in a mock, if you will, environment, but that's just real world experience, and it's great tooling. And again, it would be awesome. And I told these kids, look, this summer, you've just gone and you got your logo, you built your website, you did go to LegalZoom, get this thing ready to cook, and why not have a crack at it, So trying to empower that, I think, is very powerful. I've always been a big believer in ownership. That's why I gave away 30% of my company was, I want good people that want to be here, that are taken care of, it's true. It's like, look, do you want to have a nice house, nice car, nice watch? Of course, but I don't need 10 of them, so share that's share. And what's also more empowering is when others have ownership, seeing their commitment to something and sharing the same vision and love for something that look, Blue Chip is my baby. Marymount Sports Management is my baby. And Epic Padel is now my baby. And the reason I bring that up is for those to be uber successful, I'm a small part of that process. In 20, 30 years time, my name will be way down that list. But to me, the vision of growing something that big, that's pretty damn cool just to even be on that list. Right. And then I think the last thing, again, leadership, it's nothing new. I think that, leadership starts with the individual, right? How well you can manage yourself. And we go through this in a very basic level. I also do teach organizational management here, which is a non-sports class in the MBA program. And, class one every year is, before we get into all these theories and all of this, is that management starts with you. Your ability to get up, to put one foot in front of the other, to brush your teeth, to have breakfast, to make sure your kids are at school at the right time, to pay your bills, and actually dissecting your own ability first. Because obviously, the better you can manage yourself, the better you can manage others. That then is indicative of what we refer to as leadership and overseeing. And it all sort of kind of rolls into one. But I think from an educational side, I am definitely, I don't teach from a textbook. Everything is practical. And the kids, as a result, warm to that. I wouldn't want to teach any other way. And to be honest with you, if I was forced to teach another way, I probably wouldn't be doing this job.
I think that's important, because I remember when I was in uni as well, that the professors that had real life experience, it was more, they brought something extra to the table, unless someone who is just been in the educational system. So as you said, to bring more practical examples, doing the presentations and bringing in a real life experience, I think makes a huge difference for the students.
Yeah, 100%.
Approaching the end here, is there something I haven't asked you yet that you feel is important to bring up?
No, I mean, I've listened to, I commend you for, was it 150 guests now? Is that what it is? I mean, that's successful. And I've seen, you mentioned the organic growth when we were off air, and I definitely want to commend you, Marcus, on that. And I love the variety of the guests that you've had, and the ones that I've listened to. There's a genuine passion for what people are doing in different sectors, and I'm always so curious how to see complementary skills from other sectors and to work with those. And if I think I had if I had something to leave you with, it would really just be to summarize, a couple of things that are really important ways that I try to operate and to live my life, my business, and to try and, I hate to use that word, preach. But firstly, I mentioned leaders. Leaders don't always take the invite. Okay, I think that's worth noting. I think that there is a lot of truth in working together, being proud and celebrating your competitors, not running and hiding and backstabbing and all of this. Again, look, when I was 25, a much different Tim would have said something very different to you. But I and especially with the paddle space, like we're really impressed with what everyone is doing, and want to learn, be a part of it, and be part of that ecosystem where others are also feeling the same way about us. So, I try to do that, not just in paddle, but in all of business and management and life. And with that, again, there's truth that together we move the needle. And I think that that's something that I tried to push for in the tennis industry for many, many, many years, and was always sort of perceived as the young, brash British kid who, what the hell does he know? But here we are many years later, and the landscape has changed. But that's life, that's wisdom. And then lastly, like I said, it's something that's seen me very well is handshakes and smiles. We have, I'll send you one. We have challenge coins that have that written on that we use for within the sports management program here. And it's really a calling card for how, I think the students that come through Marymount and then also through, our staff at Blue Chip and with Epic, we want to know about you. We want you to know about us. We want to know how we can help you. And obviously, the more of that we do, the more our network grows and our ability to also ask from you as well when the time is right. Seems pretty obvious, but the more that we all do that, the more inclusive the environment, the more look. There's enough food out there for everybody, and we often do ourselves a disservice by the negativity in which we go after other people versus celebrating it. Because guess what? If you celebrate a competitor of yours, I'll tell you what, the optics of that to the outside world, you look very, very good. And the more I think people understand that, because we live in such a critical world, you'd actually be surprised, Imagine if Trump and Biden just started saying nothing but nice things about one another, right? It would be amazing how everyone would calm down. It would be quite remarkable.
Yeah, definitely. No, loving it. And what a great way to tie everything together. I like to finish these episodes with a networking questions. We have touched upon that, the importance of networking. So who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this show?
Okay, that is a good question. I've got a long list here. I'm a big believer in sometimes looking for value beyond what the core audience that you have is, right? So I'll give you somebody in the field. Dr. Mark Kovacs, you definitely should look into, has been, is very much the gold standard in sort of the health and wellness industry. Has worked with major companies and corporations and is a very impressive guy. And we're lucky to have him as a guest speaker. I also would look at a good friend of mine, Tracy St. John, was a former pro tennis player, has gone on and had an incredible marketing career with activation. She's worked for Red Bull, for Citigroup, is currently heading up St. Jude's Children's Hospital, their marketing efforts, the New Orleans Pelicans as well. She's a fantastic speaker and has got an awesome story. Another guy who I went to grad school with, Devin Bodie, who is the director of marketing for the WWE. Again, we're lucky to have him come in as a guest speaker. He's fantastic. Who else we got? We got a guy called Jimmy Lin, who is a professor over at Georgetown and was an AOL guy, is a minority owner at the Mystics, and is a local guy here and is a co-founder of Kiswi. And what I love about Jimmy is he's just this. There's no one more genuine in wanting to help specifically students, and he walks that walk in everything that he does and trying to support. And I know that he's done stuff way above and beyond what most of us can do in order to do that. While you have me, I've got another friend, Clark Burkle. This guy was an Olympian, swam in the 2012 London Games, who's become a good friend of mine. Him and his father owned a number of clubs in the Louisville area, ended up just selling them to Genesis, and now they're in some other spaces and activations. But Clark's got an incredible background there. He's obviously a world-class swimmer. And then obviously he's gone into the business world, Stanford MBA grad, and so on and so forth. I'll give my chief operating officer at Blue Chip, Jason Warnock, a shout out. I think one of the reasons I'm lucky to do what I do is I have one of the best dot the I, cross the T's operators on the planet. And who else? And I can give you another. Yeah, just let me know. There's a few for you.
Yeah, I will. That's quite a list. I've never gotten so many before.
Yeah. Well, I tell you why is that we, again, you talk about network. I mean, I call every favor from a guest speaker to come to speak at Marymount. That's one of the reasons why the program's done so well. We've had big name people that, luckily I've cultivated a good network and I haven't asked for too much. And therefore, it's not like we have a budget to come and fly them in and pay for them, but if I can grab them on a Tuesday morning on a Zoom call, they're more than willing to do so. And that's been, it helps if most people, again, we talk about everyone's got an ego. If you're asked to go speak at a university, there's not many people that are going to say no to that. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. If someone's like, would you come and be a guest speaker at I would go be a guest speaker at my daughter's kindergarten class. I would still, be like, oh, yeah, that sounds good.
I see. But you need to say no to some as well. That's what we spoke about before.
Exactly. Yeah. If you start showing up at too many parent work days at your kid's school, that's probably problematic. Yeah.
Love that. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
Of course. Great. Thanks, Marcus. All the best. I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportmpodcast.